First of all, thank you for having not just me, but Georgianne and my family here. I thought I would start with a quick little, how did we get here from Nixon's perspective, really quickly, because we haven't lived in this neighborhood all our lives. After I completed a little duty in Jeff City, we decided to come to St. Louis, bought this house. Georgianne decided this was a much better place to hang, I think, than the governor's mansion, and got here a little earlier than me. And part of the responsibility of that early was helping us find a church. We've been active involved in our church for many years, and so we were looking. And this is the closest church to where we live. So Georgianne walked down here for her first visit. We are still here. And we had to switch from being Methodist to being Presbyterians to stay here, and we're proud to have done that and happy to be here. But I just say that because this is an unbelievably excellent group of people. And when she walked in and people were with her and talking to her, all the things that everybody here does every week, that is a superpower that we, as part of this congregation, need to continue to use. So now I get to work here. I'm going to talk today, whether I want to or not. The message today is about the pastoral transition in our church and the everyday transitions that we have to make. And if I'm successful in analogizing those two together, then we should get a good feeling about the potential new pastor, and we should feel stronger about ourselves. So there we go. I lay down the line what I got. And I'm not sure who put the plastic little Jesus loves you up here for me for good luck, but I think staring right at the Lord's face while you attempt to give a sermon is somewhat challenging, at least it's a cartoon. So how do they get transition? What about why would I have any sort of expertise in that area? I've got a lot. Many of it in the government sector where I've come in and had to replace things. Obviously, when I came in as the chief executive of the state, switch your party, same as was AG. We had this thorough transition and lay out our goals from being very strict timelines. And I'm proud to say that in January, when I was sworn in as governor, we already had all our cabinet, council in every division, press person in every division, policy person in every division, and we're ready to go on day one. And I think it showed some focus that got things done. Anyway, sometimes, as far as the pastoral transition or church and everyday transition, sometimes change comes fast. It can literally happen as you walk out here and a car comes by. Other times it's more slowly. And recognizing that and understanding where you are in it is something that's useful for some level of mental health. In Prophet Jeremiah's letter to the exiles of Babylon, Jeremiah 29, 1 through 23, he says they may have to wait 70 years for the change they want to need. Think about that. These Israelites were struck out of their country, and the various prophets had come to speak to them and told them, you're going to be good, everything's fine, you'll be out real soon here, we got you. Those are not the exact words from the Old Testament. They could have been if you and I would have written it. No. And so, it is really important to recognize where you are and really recognize the people that are around you. But during these transitions, things are thrown up. During the waiting period, they must be realistic and stay loyal to their values and maintain the life of faith during the waiting time. That is the message of Jeremiah. Even if we have other things going on, even if the church and each of us involved in our roles with the church have other things going on, that is not an excuse to give up either our faith or our mission. We have to continue. That is our strength. That is what we draw from anyway. And so the first lesson from this is to keep going. So I'll start with St. Louis and T.S. Eliot, who wrote a short note in 4 Quartets. He said, what we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. So transitions have to start with an end. in Jeremiah 29:8, he says, "For saith the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, let not your prophets or your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken to your dreams, which ye cause to be dreamed, for they prophesy falsely unto your name, you and my name. I did not send them, declares the Lord." The signal of this in mind is really watch out for false prophets during transition. Okay? As the choices are going to have to be made by this congregation, there will be a lot of I don't want to call them false prophets, but there's just a lot of things coming at you. So, then verse 10, "For saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you in causing you to return. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and future." That's the money line from Jeremiah, that if you're going to be a biblical person, look at it, try to find something that's out in the news or out in more of the lexicon, that's it. "For I know the plans I have for you." The Lord's saying plans to prosper. That's why you have to have faith. It was that faith in the Lord to stick through the rest of the time that the Israelites did that historically has made such a difference, not only for their faith in their society, but also for all of us. We just need to follow God's way of peace. So, change occurs. There's 5 key lessons, in my opinion, from Jeremiah 29. I'll go quick. I don't think you can read these exactly, but if you read as much as I did, or Matt, or somebody else on this sort of stuff, I think you'll get these 5. First, God offers hope, a future, and ultimate restoration, even when we are facing a long and painful season of difficult waiting. You're a hostage in a war, away from home, and the big guy comes in and says, "I got you, 70 more years, we're going to be fine." It's a difficult time. It's a difficult situation. Very difficult. So, in this season of difficult waiting, what was the Lord, through Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah's words? First, bloom where you are planted. God told Jewish exiles in Babylon not to sit around waiting for a quick escape, but to build houses, plant gardens, and live their lives fully, right where they are. You don't have to move. We're here. Number 2, seek the good of your surroundings. I think sometimes during these processes of change, people will look at what the choices are making sound doing because that's bad and I don't want to do that. Instead of saying that's good and I want to do it. So I think it's really important that you seek the good of your surroundings and the things going forward so that your vision, our vision, is positive. Number 3 is trust God's timing. I mean, this is one you just got to do. It works eventually or quickly, but we're not going to change it, and our Lord is thinking about us. God's plans are good. So what's in the future is good. It's not bad. It's better. It's good. We're improving. And 5 is seek God genuinely. I think that word is very important in our modern culture here. There's a lot of people talking about God, talking about religion, talking about what it means or what it means to them or what we should think, instead of genuinely seeking God yourself and understanding that relationship, which is really what, in my view, and I think in Jesus is the key. So transition can be a scary word. For all the changes, we got no choice but to soldier on. We live in a world with disturbing changes in tone and action from our leaders. But we, as faithful followers of Christ, are poised to reassert our shared values and emerge from what I'm referring as an unloving interruption. When the leaders are saying some of the stuff they're saying now, that's not loving words. That we're loving people. And so we will emerge from this unloving situation. We will only do it if we're strong during it. Our ancient scriptures provide us with illuminating insight on how to handle disturbing events in the world. Jesus reminds us that we are in the world, but not of the world. The scriptures lead us through hard situations and remind us to keep our focus on God. Transitions and change can be tough and long-lived, as I said before. He said 70 years. That is not a short amount of time. Go to this Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. Transitions should prosper you and give you hope for a future, instead of being a place where people are going to say, we made the wrong decision, or this person was this, and that, and that. I disagree, because There's no way everybody here is going to agree on everything anyway. But, so, one of the other interesting little things about Georgiana and this church is we have not always been Presbyterians. And I think there's a lot of folks here that haven't always been Presbyterians either. There's days when I feel like I'm not good enough. More guilt than Holy Words than this one. But I was a Methodist, but I'm a chief of pastors. But basically, the head office just sent you something. And I've just been really interested in this process that we're going through, this democratic process of giving anybody that wants input, giving anybody that wants to be involved in it the chance to add value to what this congregation is and what it can do. And that democracy of this particular Presbyterian history and the way we're living now is extremely, extremely important. So God told the Israelites to build houses, plant gardens, marry, and pray for peace. So do that, please. Transitions are things that have been studied and written about. Scientific studies show in order to have a successful transition, there are stages or steps. The act of making an ending is first. A transition does not really start until you decide that something else is over. Something's over. You're not in transition if you're still thinking about it. As Oprah Winfrey says, we can't become what we need by remaining who we are. True growth requires shedding old habits, comfort zones, and past identities to make space for your future self. So, personally, what did Georgiana and I do when we got here? Missouri's not new to us. So this area, I lived here in college for a little while. One of the things that she decided that I didn't adopt is to try to drive, when we drive for errands, on what she refers to as the POB, path of beauty. She just disdains interstates. So if you see us on a 2-lane road with nice trees, go into a mall somewhere or a Walmart or whatever, it's because we didn't take the big highways. And it's been an interesting way to see this whole area. This does not take the fastest, but take the prettiest. And it has made a difference. Me personally, I'm still doing some practice law. I'm still about Bennett, but I've basically got one of the council status there. I'm still teaching at WashU, in law school there, but I still have some to take about and but a few other steps to take in transition come from the book and the book. First, break old patterns. You're not in transition if you're doing the same thing. Literally, for me, after I got out of being in the office and came here, when I drive home or drive somewhere, I'd go a different way each time. Just something that was different. Just walk the other way. Put stuff in the counter that's a little different. Don't stay exactly the way you are on things, especially things you can personally control. Embrace discomfort. Real transformation may feel awkward because it breaks routines. None of that stuff's easy, but it gets you to places you need to be. And then make space for change. And the only way to make space for change, I don't know anybody here that's not doing a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to have to quit doing some stuff to have some time to do some other stuff. So you got to look at stuff you can take off your list. And Georgiana would say that I've taken a number of things off the list around the house for decades. We'll just leave it at that. But I think that's one example of what we did. We're in the middle of what we call our 30-30-30 plan. 30 when we got together, 30 years of public service, and 30 years of something else. So we're in something else plan, which means looking for other things, looking for ways to do things and things to do that we hadn't done in the past. And for example, this week, when that meteor shower came through, we just got in our car and drove down to Caledonia, laid out in the backyard and watched this property down there and watched the meteor shower. It never would have done that before. No. So, in order to take action, you have to identify old habits and fears that you can release. Habits are fears, both of them are in the same zone here. Accept the unknown, understand that strength comes from learning, and focus on daily action. I think sometimes in transition issues, people think far too on it. What is it going to be 5 years? Where's it going to be this year? How much money am I going to make? Who's going to be in this position? Who's going to be in that position? in our perspective, you have to just, once the decision is made on transition, you have to build small, new habits that lead to your goal, okay? It's a small, incremental process. Now, we all know our church will become who we need, what we need, moving through this transaction. Change is a process. The transition is a process after a decision. The distinction is not unimportant. It's nice to be in a church where people read. We all know our church will become what we need. So, I want to analogize back 250 years ago for this. We just had the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence was read in public for the first time on July 8th of 1776 by the Sheriff of Philadelphia, a fellow named Colonel John Nixon. So close to us that last year's governor, I was asked by the Park Service to read the Declaration on July 8th. They didn't assault. We'll get to that unfun thing in a minute. But so what they decided about, why they decided it was July 8th instead of 4th of July, was there were a number of folks with guns and red coats standing right outside the doors of what we now call Independence Hall. And as you get ready to take a vote, with somebody getting ready to start a war at you, and you a long way from home, they just thought the easiest way to handle it was to say 4 days. So the last motion of Congress was to say that it should be read 40 cents by the Sheriff of Philadelphia, and which he did. I hope that no one tries to ask George Ann for the picture of me when I read the Declaration of Independence behind Independence Hall with thousands of people out there. A number of British citizens have been assaulted by the Park Service to boo and yell at me. But it is literally the only picture I've ever had since getting elected to office with me with a hat on. It happens to be a tricolor hat. The picture has been wiped from the internet. Now this crew, someone will probably find I didn't think it was a good situation, picture. But that document defines for us as a country, as a people, of transition. Right there. In that exact moment, when Congress voted for independence, as Ken Burns said, we switched from being subjects to citizens. We didn't have to follow the king. We had to be responsible for ourselves. And the guys outside didn't like it and everything else. It was a significant step. More than us choosing among the various good pastors that are out there. I don't mean to say that choosing pastors is the equivalent of starting a country. But if we make the wrong one, we can feel like it. If you have the right process, you get the right people. That's how you know everybody is. So the responsibility on those initial initial citizens was immense. They had to write a rule book. It didn't work all that well at first either. If you recall, the Confederation didn't work all that well. We went 10 years on the August Confederation, leaving the states with too much power. Couldn't get much done. Had to kind of start over 10 years after we passed the Declaration. And write the Constitution went into effect in 1789, the real Constitution. And in order to get it passed, we had to cut a bunch of political deals and add amendments so that when they voted on it, they would have some amendments. And frankly, freedom of speech was not a good thing to forget, but in religion. But it was a very intense times, very intense times. And as these framers were weighing these decisions, time and time again, if you read this history, they really relied on their religion. It was extremely important as to how this country was going to be ordered. 12 of the 56 members of the Continental Congress that voted and passed the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, were Presbyterians. And King George III, when referring to the Revolutionary War, never referred to it as the Revolutionary War. He called it the Presbyterian Rebellion. So we've been around, folks. Especially history periods like this. That's why I say when I talk about this stuff in a longer line, 12 of 56 plus the king on the guy on the other side says it's Protestant Presbyterians doing this. And one of the reasons, second, is that the democracy of the Presbyterian Church is something good that the Founding Fathers used as an example of how to make sure that people remain involved. This church is very old. Everybody here's still involved. That's organized pretty well. He was trying to do that for the country. As they said, they were trying to do that. So it's not an easy transition for new citizens. The framers understood the fear people would have and directed them back to their reliance on God's protection and their bond to each other. It was a time of transition. I appreciate it. Let me just make one more comment about Bill since he's not here. I appreciate how Bill has sowed his sermons with Buddhist wisdom, opening up from all sorts of places. Not afraid to listen to people. I want to read one Buddhist quote that I think recently fits our times. It says, and I quote, "Suffering begins when the mind expects permanence from what is designed to change, except that nothing will remain the same." Bill ain't going to be here next year. Not right here, not standing behind him. It's going to change. And we have a joint responsibility to make sure this is a positive outcome. And I think it will be. I'm very, very confident. But it's not permanent. So there are many places in the Bible that exhort us to look forward and embrace change. If you're ever going to need a book to get you positive about things are going to be okay. And I'm in the Old Testament, for gosh sakes. By the time we get to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we can go. But even in the Old Testament, it's not hard to find. And even among the scriptures, it's not hard to find. I rely on Isaiah 43:19. I'm trying to get positive out there. "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." That's helpful. Now we as a congregation will embrace our changes. I'm confident if we're involved in making it. We know that even though Bill is a rare and beloved pastor, we will not let this usual and inevitable transition for our historic church overwhelm our commitment to our values, our service, and each other. I'm just going to repeat that, because if we can do that, folks, we're all good. We as a congregation can and will embrace our change. We know that even though Bill is a rare and beloved pastor, we will not let this usual and inevitable transition for our historic church overwhelm our commitment to our values, our service, and to each other. And I look at you guys as the people here today, and I think that is true on true. I think people are ready for that task. And the seriousness with which this church has taken this responsibility with a relatively short amount of time is just incredibly impressive. And so the other thing that I always try to say is we always also need during this process to be very patient with each other. Because these are the kind of processes in which people actually tell you how they feel. Don't do that because that wouldn't work. I don't like that. So you're going to run into some conversations of necessity, for gosh sakes. So we all have to be extremely patient with one another. Not a trait I'm familiar as being one that people say about Jay Nixon. But we should always endeavor to be patient with one another. And it's always said, it's always important not to never forget. The reward of patience is patience. So please, be patient with your fellow parishioners here, or whatever we call each other. And let's take this task and do what the Lord has asked us to do. Continue this wonderful mission that while we have been here has grown in so many ways. We are not a stagnant place. And that's really the task. And find someone who fits in with us, but understanding that the person we choose or gets chosen is not the solution. It's a process that we're going to be in, and they'll be in time to time. I talked to a couple of people about it today. We were on the committee last time, and all that sort of stuff. But really confident. So, if I was going to leave you one message, we are committed to honorably and honestly and directly succeeding not only on the short-term task of a pastor, but on a long-term task in a world, in a country in which churches are ending and grinding to nothing. This group was not doing that. And we will always endeavor to continue on our success. And the last part is just, I just want to say a personal thank you from Georgie and I. This has been folks have been wonderfully open and helpful to us. Not a lot of people trust politicians who we meet. I kind of think we're in some different world where we're thinking about ourselves more than them. I've tried to be different than that. I really have. And I think one of the reasons why I had some level of success was that people understood this is very different I was talking. I think they understood what I said I meant, what I said I thought about, and I wasn't inconsistent. And I think that that's something we got to do here on these values, and I think we will. I'm giving a speech about something I know is going to happen, and it's going to happen in a good way. So I should get down and we should get going on that. But to see that the church would have, anyway, let's just all, and if somebody before Bill gets back would take back the Jesus loves you kids, be more well received by me. And then I want to thank, real quick, to thank Georgina. She's giving me a no. She hasn't done any good, I guess. Give me your A game next year. No, I'm just saying. We have found this as a community that we really enjoy in so many ways. And so much that ties back to here. This church is of this community. This church is this community, and all of you individually carry that responsibility incredibly well. Thank you, God.